dug real deep into it, and I got to the understanding that we're living in a multi-dimensional universe, and there's at least 11 dimensions. Otherwise, the universe would collapse. Each dimension is a 90-degree angle right above the next one, compactified. So they're sitting right on top of us. So within less than a Planck unit of space above you, there's another dimension that actually exists with a whole nother universe happening simultaneously while we're sitting right here. Wild.
That's hard to fathom. It's hard to fathom. So right here where we're sitting right now, there's a whole nother dimension of a whole nother universe happening, life taking place.
Yes.
Right in the same space that we are.
Right here. Right here where we are. Right here. Vast too. Vast. Just as vast as ours is vast. And from higher dimensions, they experience time differently. Time really doesn't exist. The past, present, and the future happen all at once. So somebody, for example, from the fifth dimension would look at us and they'd be able to see us. Imagine us in this building here, but imagine when I first walked in, and imagine us in here, and imagine me like in the bathroom or something. They'd be able to see us in all the different rooms. The different rooms will represent different time frames of existence within this structure. So they can see the past, present, and future at the same time. So it's pretty cool. Weird stuff starts happening the higher the dimensions you go.
So is the idea that when you're in a higher dimension, you can see below lower dimensions, but you can't see dimensions above you?
Exactly, unless you have the capability of matching. First, you have to obtain the frequency of a higher dimension and then match that frequency to be able to walk in. So
match the frequency.
Yeah. So, for example, my hand is stopped now by this table, right? Why is it stopped? I'm not really touching the table. There's repulsion going on. Electromagnetic repulsion between the electrons in my hand is repelling the electrons in the table. You don't really touch anything. Now, if I can match the subatomic frequency of the atoms in this chunk of wood here on this table, I could, with my hand, I would be able to pass my hand right through this table unscathed. Why? Because atoms are 99.999% empty space. Nothing is really here. Everything is only a light wave slowed down to a particular frequency. And so if you can match frequencies, you can merge with things. You can walk through walls and all that kind of stuff. The things that seem paranormal could be advanced beings have tapped into some type of understanding of how to match different frequencies in our dimension and appear apparitional or paranormal. But in true reality, they could just be taking a peek in.
And how did we come to the understanding that these higher dimensions exist? Like, what is the most basic evidence that we have of this?
Quantum physics proves it. See, when we look into the quantum world, everything changed. In standard physics is where we are right now, in the large side of physics. But the smaller you go, the more weird things get. We find that particles transphase in and out of existence, and they go to different dimensions. We even know now that some of our synapses of our thoughts in our brain phase out of this dimension and they go somewhere else, and then they come back again. And this has all been tracked and traced through the understanding of quantum mechanics and quantum physics, and understanding that dimensions exist. The biggest way that we made a model of this is we figured out how to create something called quasi-crystals. Now, these quasi-crystals are these multi-dimensional crystals. We actually created an 8th-dimensional quasi-crystal.
We created this?
Yes, we created it.
How did we create it?
We created in a laboratory using different technologies. And then from that 8th-dimensional quasi-crystal, it casts a shadow of itself down to a 4th-dimensional quasi-crystal, which then casts down a shadow which creates a sphere. So we know that the universe is most likely the shadow of a higher dimension. It's crazy stuff.
Yeah, that's kind of mind-bending.
We're living in a light matrix, which is actually a light matrix, which is a shadow of a much higher dimension. And so we know this because they created these crystals, these quasi-crystals, and when they put them at different angles, they cast shadows. Sometimes
what do these crystals look like?
You look up the quasi-crystals, yeah. They look like, have you ever seen Adinkra codes? Adinkras?
I think I've heard you talk about this before. No,
they look like Adinkra symbols, mathematical symbols, but in the 3rd-dimensional time space. And so if you take them and pull them out into a 3rd-dimensional time space, they look like these lines that are connected with these nodes like that. You see? Quasi-crystals.
This is a quasi-crystal.
Yeah.
And so
it's an ordered structure, but it's not periodic. And it's got a crystalline
formed
pattern.
atomically.
Yeah.
in a manner somewhere between the amorpha solids of glasses, special forms of metals and other minerals, as well as common glass, and the precise pattern of crystals.
Yeah. So if you type in if you put 8th dimensional quasi-crystal, you should see some research that come up on that.
It looks like what you look into a kaleidoscope.
It's a fractal. It's all about fractal. We live in a fractal holographic universe. The quasi-crystal is a fundamental basis of the fractal holography that we're living in. We're fully immersed in it, so we can't detect it, but we're living in a light matrix. And that's what the Adinkra codes also prove.
Okay, explain the Adinkra codes. What is that exactly?
So Professor James Gates Jr., University of Maryland, former scientific advisor to President Obama, just to give you, like, this guy, he's not just like a jackpot or something. He's like a real dude, you know?
Yeah.
And he put together a team of the most incredible supersymmetry and theoretical physicists in the world, like the top brains in the world on this. And they started analyzing what is the ether of space-time. What is this soup that we're living in, that we're inhabiting, this universe? What is it? What is it made of? What's powering it? They discovered something called Adinkra codes, which go back to the ancient Dogon tribe from Mali, Africa. The original inhabitants of the land of Cam then moved to Mali later after they were thrown out, taken over at one point. But they still kept this ancient knowledge in Mali about these Adinkra codes, and they would draw these patterns. Well, he discovered that these patterns are actually mathematical codes. And these are not just any mathematical code. There goes one there. They're actually the codes that describe the ether of space-time itself. They're error-correcting codes, the same exact codes that run our search engines and web browsers that we're using right now to look at the image. There's coding behind that screen that runs this, what we just did. And guess what? It's the same code that runs the universe. So we discovered that we're living in a programmed light matrix. There's a software programmer that has written this code.
Austin, pull up more images of this.
There's all different types of images. There you go. See, now that you see that one there, right there. That's a quasi. That looks like a lot like a quasi crystal. If you were to shrink it down and put a whole bunch of them in one location, it looks very similar to a quasi crystal. So these are Adinkra codes, and you can see the colorful one that was up there. These are depicting the nature of reality.
Wow.
And they actually are mathematical programming codes. They're a special type of code, though. They're error-correcting codes. The same type that Google browser is running on is the same thing that runs the universe.
Error-correcting codes.
Yeah.
And what do we gain from all of this knowledge? Like, what does this tell us, and where do we take this? Like, what is obviously this is like foundational knowledge for us, but like, where do you see it going?
Well, if you understand that we're living in a fractal holographic light matrix, it doesn't mean we're not real. It just means that there is a creator or creators, that we're living in something that was created, just like the ancient texts and all the scribes and biblical texts and everything else says. But it tells us, wow, this is the method of the creation. Now we're getting closer to understanding what we really are. We understand now that consciousness isn't made inside this avatar body, that the avatar body doesn't even exist, that consciousness is a stream of something coming from somewhere else, and it's being picked up in this matrix with this coding. If you took all the humans on Earth, there's 8 billion humans on Earth. If I took all 8 billion humans and removed the empty space between their atoms, I can fit every human into a sugar cube. One sugar cube can hold all 8 billion of us.
Really?
Yeah.
All the atoms of 8 billion people on Earth.
You can see atoms are empty space. If you take the empty space out, you collapse it into one sugar cube. All 8 billion can fit in one sugar cube. So what does that mean?
Wild.
What's here? There's only one consciousness, it seems. And it's like a radio station that's transmitting out a frequency from a higher dimension. Our avatar bodies pick up that frequency. You're 99.1, I'm 99.2, he's 99.3, but it's still coming from the same source. And so we're all coming from the same source. It's like the universe has found a way to live subjectively through multiple entities, but not even through entities, even through objects that we consider to be man-made, because every atom we know now in quantum physics is also conscious.
Does this give any credence to the simulation theory?
Absolutely. We're living in a simulation. This is an actual simulation.
So what do you think about the Bible?
Well, the Bible has a lot of good information in it. If you can apply some of the information, it can really change your life. It can really put you on the right path. But it also has some information in it that's detrimental to people as well. You have to have discernment with what you're reading in the book, in the Bible. In the Bible, where you see the word God everywhere, that's a mistranslation by accident on purpose. The original word is gods with an S. It's always with an S. When you back engineer the actual word, the translations, you find out it's gods, not God singular. Elohim is also a plural term. It's not a singular term. And you also discover that Yahweh is actually Enlil from the Sumerian cuneiform pantheon, from the Sumerian cuneiform text. He's Enlil. It becomes Yahweh in the biblical text. And there's all these correlations between the different ancient characters from the Sumerian text end up in the biblical text. And you find out in the book of Deuteronomy that these gods are fighting each other over resources and people. So if you read, anyone who reads the book of Deuteronomy begins to realize this probably isn't the creator of the universe that wrote this. When God tells people, God is supposed to be all-knowing, all-loving, ain't he the same all the time? Then all of a sudden, you read in the book of Deuteronomy and he's saying, there's one person in this city that doesn't like me. I want you guys to go over there. Now, keep in mind, they've never met these people. Kill the women, kill the children, kill their animals, and bring the spoils of war back to me. Now, what kind of God needs the spoils of war, and what kind of God needs to kill children? There's also a verse in there in the book of Deuteronomy where God tells a man, if you see a woman walking through the land and you decide to rape her, and the word rape is the actual word, look it up, you can. And if after you rape her, if you decide you want to make her your wife, you can keep her as your wife too. Now you have rape and abduction. Now, you're saying to yourself, the creator of the universe, okay, has all power, all-knowing, omnipotent, omniscient. Why in the world would he write stuff like that or give a man the ability to write stuff like that to put in his book? In some cases, it's not talking about the creator of the universe. We have to be able to discern that. We have to be able to have the eye to see that some of this is manipulation for the power of people to put on top of other people. In the New Testament, Jesus says, honor your slave master. Now, why would we want to honor a slave master? As you would honor me, he says. Do you think Jesus really would say something like that? I don't. I think that his message was pure and clean and clear, that he was trying to usher back a level of Christ consciousness back in humanity. And that's the return. The second return is when we all reach a level of Christ consciousness. That's when Jesus comes back. He comes back in our minds, not in a physical form. And for people to take his words and screw it around to make it okay for slavery, I think that's a big thing where we see now the injection of human minds, not the creator of the universe. So you have to be discerning with the biblical text.
Who is Jesus to you? In your eyes, who is Jesus?
His name is Yeshua. Okay. Jesus is, first, the J is a recent letter. The J is not that old. So it really was originally Isus. And that name, Isus, means hail Zeus. Okay. So you're calling on Zeus when you say Jesus, one of the Sumerian people who converted over to the Greek gods. But his name is Yeshua. And so Yeshua, to me, very powerful person, very spiritual, high level of knowledge, a student of the Egyptian mysteries. When Jesus disappears from the Bible, he actually ends up in Egypt. Okay. You can find this information in a book that was kept out of the biblical text called the Gospel of the Holy 12. And in the Gospel of the Holy 12, he shows up in Egypt. And we know that's a fact because I take people on tour every year to Egypt, and I take them to the house that Jesus lived in. It's a crypt. It's actually worship. People come there to see that bed that he laid in every single year. When I take people there, we take them straight there. And we know the path that he traveled throughout Egypt because it's a huge sign outside that Coptic church where he lived that shows where he went. Now, when he was in Egypt, what did he go there for? To learn the Egyptian mysteries. Who taught the Egyptian mysteries? Thoth, the Atlantean priest king, the person I wrote this book about. And so Thoth was the teacher of the Egyptian mysteries, or the ancient mysteries, of what it was called. And then he leaves there and he goes to Tibet to learn Qigong and Reiki healing, which was confirmed by the Dalai Lama. And then he heads down into India to learn the mystic arts, teaching reincarnation all the way back. Then the Bible picks him up at the age of 32. I call my son out of Egypt. He shows up on the back of a donkey, proclaims himself to be the Messiah. So it's a big story. I think that he had a big message. I don't think people were able to grasp it at the time. But his message was that not that he was coming back, but that the Christ would return, the Christ consciousness.
Where did you get this information? What book did you read that said this? Because this isn't, you didn't come up with this. You read this from somewhere. What did you read that told you this?
The Gospel of the Holy 12.
The Gospel of the Holy 12.
Another apocryphal text that was, kept out of the canonized Bible.
Got it. And that's what you learned from this?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So let me ask you, there's a lot of people that, smart people, mathematicians, a lot of skeptics that are out there as well. How many people agree with what you have to say? How many people agree with this?
Well, I got 8 million people following my accounts across all platforms. I don't know.
So I'm not talking about that part. Of course, when you're talking with this level of firmness, there's a lot of that's why I'm curious. I'm curious to know how you come up with your beliefs.
Yeah.
But why is it, if that's what you believe in, more people don't believe in that? Why do you think it's such a small sect?
When you're born, you're given a name, a race, and a religion,
right.
And you spend the rest of your life defending a false identity. You don't know who you are. I don't know who I am. You were given your name. I was given my name. Who's Billy Carson? I didn't come up with that name. Somebody gave me that name. And then somebody said, get on your knees and pray before you go to bed. Say the Lord's Prayer before you go to bed. And so I got on my knees and I said the Lord's Prayer, Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, But then when you trace back that Lord's Prayer, whose prayer is that? That's the prayer of Ptah. Who's Ptah? Ea Enki from the Sumerian tablets. He wrote that prayer in ancient cuneiform, which then made it all the way into the Bible. And you think you're praying to God, you're saying the prayer of Ptah. So we've been brainwashed. We've been programmed because for generations, we keep getting handed down this system where we're given this false creation of who we are, and we believe it wholeheartedly. We'll fight for it to the absolute death. People will die over those things that were given to them, not that they came up with on their own initially or originally. So it's a dangerous thing because we have a lot of people walking around that just took the programming code, and they don't even understand really who they are, what they're all about. That's why so many people don't walk in their passion. So many people don't even know what their passion is because they've been given and told what their passion is going to be, and they have no clue how to find out who they really truly are or what they would love to be involved in or what their passion truly is. So we have a lot of NPCs walking around, non-players out here just walking around, have no clue, just programs in the matrix. But then you have a few of us that have discovered who we are, that are working on trying to go to inner space instead of outer space, dig deep within ourselves, learn how to walk in our power, find out what our passion is, maximize that, and access that power and spread that power throughout the world.
Would you say your parents were Christians?
They were quasi-Christians. So they didn't go to church, but, my dad would make me do book reports on the Bible from the time I was a little kid. My mother would make me say the prayers, So that in that way, they were Christians.
When did you stop?
I stopped probably, I say, maybe around 12 or 13. I realized something was too much. There was too much contradiction in the text. Because remember, I'm doing book reports on the biblical text. And when I got to the point where God said, I create the good and I create the evil, do what I say at the Lord. That's in Isaiah. Then I realized something was really off here because I realized through my studies that God had killed over 3 million people in the Bible, and the Satan didn't kill anybody. So I said, wait a minute, something's a little off here. He's killing everybody, and Satan didn't kill anybody. And so we have to really take a look. And the deeper I dug into Deuteronomy, then I realized there's something wrong. What it was at that moment, I couldn't figure out, but I just knew something was a little off. I dabbled in it again later on to see maybe if there was something that I missed. And again, later on in my life, in my late 20s, I said, it just doesn't make any sense. There's too many question marks. And every time you ask a question, they say, don't question God. Don't question the Lord. Blind faith. And I'm thinking, if I'm going to put all of my eternity into one book, if I'm saying this one book is going to lead me to eternity, and I don't know everything about it, every aspect about it, I can't question it, I can't dig deeper to get more knowledge out of it, then I think there's something wrong with that. I think there's something being hidden from me. And I'd rather be able to dig deeper, get more knowledge, get more understanding versus people shunning me away from trying to dig deeper to get more answers. And I think that's a big problem. And I think the people that are shunning away and stopping you from getting those answers don't have the answers themselves.
When you went through this journey that you're going through, are your parents seeing you go through the self-actualization where you're having your own philosophies? Are they watching you, witnessing you going through this?
Oh, yeah.
So how old were you when they're watching this?
Pretty much from 7 all the way up. They gradually saw me changing. When I was 7 years old, I realized one thing. This is what's changed my whole life. My friends kept going to the ice cream truck. They had money every day, even though we were in the ghetto, poor, broke. We had nothing. We were getting money donated to us from local church and other people in the neighborhood. And we were taking showers outside in the backyard because we didn't have water on. We'd plug the hose into our neighbor's house. And I'm saying, how in the hell can they afford the ice cream truck every single day? So I go outside and I say to myself, there's got to be something I can do. I said, I'm going to go inside and get all my toys. I put all my toys in an old Winn-Dixie milk crate, and I went door to door. I violated my mom's rules about leaving the circumference of the
vicinity,
house. Yeah. And I went door to door around the whole block. I squared the block and asked for donations in exchange for my toys. And so I sold all my toys that day, and I ended up with like $13 in change. And I went to the ice cream truck, and I got my bazooka bubble gum with my comic strip inside of it, and I realized something. I said, wow, I'm going to save myself. There's nobody coming to save me. I am my own savior. And that changed my life forever. And that same
7
day,
years old?
7 years old. My mom saw me standing in the picture window of the house we were renting, and I had a couple of dollars in my hand. She said, what's wrong, son? I said, I don't belong here. I'm getting out.